1, 2, 3, 4. I told you so. I told you. I told you so. I told you. Yeah. Remember when I told you about 9/11? Remember when I told you about Building 7? Remember when I told you about the fluoride in the water? Yes, I did.
You got a drinking problem.
Remember when I told you about the New World Order?
That was me.
Remember that? Remember when I told you about the chemtrails in the sky? Remember when I told you that NASA was full of lies? Remember when I told you about the ultra mind control? Well, I just want to say that I told you so, yeah.
And don't let me be the one to tell you in the end that I told you so.
It looks like Danelle has found another victim. Another victim to spread her lies to convince them that her sister is innocent. I'm not attacking Danelle. Here he goes, harassing Danelle and hurting Danelle. Danelle has to realize that if she puts information out about this case, that people have the right to rebut it. So, crime talk on Crime Talk. I'll go over and visit that later. This is the one who she is trying to, it looks like she's creating another Sully. But let's see what we got here. James Cron was not a retired investigator. Yes, he was. He was he was taught crime scene investigations. He was a retired investigator. He was also a retired deputy. You can retire from two different fields. Tasked in clerical work and taking fingerprints. That was part of his job, yeah. You know, we don't crack on a nurse who testified for Darley because she's changed the bedpan every now and then, do we? He wasn't an investigator until Darley's case. Wrong. That's wrong. He's been a consultant for quite a while. He came out of retirement, though, for Darley's case. I just can't believe that, but it's very true. This woman was so wronged. That crime TikTok. Really? Instead of telling the truth. That's just what the articles I have said. I'll have to dig into that more. Thanks, Pam. He should have never been a consultant. He definitely is the biggest reason she was wrongfully accused. No, he's not. She was accused because she killed her kids. And the stuff that James Cron said back then, it still holds true today. You want to blame it on him, as if that he gave them tunnel vision. No. All those police that went in that scene did not fucking believe Darley. None of them. Neither did the paramedics. If it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, it might be a fucking duck. Or it could be a quackhead. Depending on who you are. He should have never been a consultant. Well, you had Lloyd Harrell as your consultant, and we'll talk more about him. Retired FBI dumbass. It sounds like way too much she would have to do in that timeline. There they go, trying to much fake the timeline again. People don't realize the staging started as soon as Darren shut that bedroom door and laid down. That's when it started. That's when she could quietly go cut the screen, relax for a minute, flip the table over. Even with the kids asleep, she could have flipped the table over. All right, so you tell me how that staging, how she didn't have time to do it. The first time that I went to that alley, went to the house, their outlet, I didn't walk the alley to where the sock was. I didn't walk it. I put the sock on the top of the car, had it parked on the side of the gate there because the intruder, the theory was back then, I did this as a supporter. And I didn't film shit back then like I do now. I didn't realize I would have to. But the consensus was that the intruder came out the back gate and his car was sitting right there, or they were waiting for him right there. This is what supporters are saying. They're saying he took that sock off to grab his keys out of his pocket and inadvertently put that sock on top of the car. And that when he took off, the sock being there was a result of it falling off the car. So I did the test. We had a 2008 Toyota Corolla, brand new, ordered from the year before, and the 3 times that I did it, because you have to go all the way around the alley to do it again. You can't keep backing up. I didn't want to do that, so I had to go all the way around the alley. I did it 3 times in broad daylight. The sock fell close. That was the consensus of that. She says, yes, I couldn't remember the exact time it would have been. I've been saying 1 minute and 30 seconds to be generous. But even if it were 2 minutes, I have a hard time believing it can be done. The only thing that really had to be done in a timely manner is to put that sock out there and then attack Damon again. It definitely doesn't seem like it. Unalive her children, harm herself, cut the screen, run 75 yards down there, 75 back, clean the sink. See, that's what you don't understand. You don't have to cut the screen right after you kill the kids. You don't have to do that. You can do that before. The behavior panel did a fascinating analysis on her. She celebrated her kid's birthday at his grave a week after the party and danced on his grave, which she didn't dance. But she was happy. She was kind of swaying around a little bit, but she wasn't dancing. It was televised, very abnormal behavior for the situation. Crime Talk, who is incredibly cute. Crime Talk says, I know the whole story. That is not abnormal, in my opinion. I have seen people dump beer on a graveside of a drinker. It was her kid's birthday. She brought balloons and silly string. Did you see the footage before the clip of the party? Darley, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I didn't see the rest of this. There was the reason that we didn't see the clip of the memorial footage is because Darley's defense didn't allow it in. The prosecution had no problem with it. The defense didn't allow it in. Now, I wonder why the defense, after Greg Parks encouraged him, the DA encouraged him during the fiasco with Jimmy Patterson taking the fifth. Greg Davis said, at that testimony, yeah, I don't have a problem with them putting that tape in there. It was in evidence. They could have presented it. But Doug Mulder said it didn't carry much weight. That's what he said in the interview. The reason Doug Mulder didn't introduce that tape is because it doesn't show a grieving, falling down on the ground Darley. We can see about a little 15-second clip of it while they're praying. And if you look at that, everyone else is standing up with their heads down praying. Darley's sitting on the grass playing. And just for the record, here we go. Everybody's lying except for Darley. The behavior analysis is about as accurate as a flip of a coin. Then why would your mom go on and on and on about regression therapy? How accurate is that? They try to put 2 people in there. These men are also trained on law enforcement side. So, of course, they would want to trust their colleagues. Right. So, let's explain it. Let's think of your mentality here. You figure that since the guys on the behavior panel, who they're not the only ones that have picked up on Darley's behavior. We also had Peter Hyatt. We also had the dialogue that picked up on Darley's behavior the same way. The dialogue, if you look at her, I encouraged her to look at Darley's case, and she did. Okay, we have lots of different people that that feel like she's guilty. So again, James Cron, this is what's wrong with him. That Tom Bevel, this is what's wrong with him. That Charles Lynch, this is wrong with him. That David Waddell, this is what's wrong with him. Those nurses, this is what's wrong with them. That Greg Davis, this is what's wrong with them. That behavior panel, this is what's wrong with them. Those men are also trained on the law enforcement side, so of course they want to trust their colleagues, but they didn't realize how incompetent their peers were. Here, sad. So, if you think that just because they are law enforcement, that they would back what the police said, and they're not all law enforcement, they're scientists. So, does it seem right to you that they would only, want to back their side because they're law enforcement too? Right? I mean, it's only natural, right? You're the one that said I would do anything for my sister. Just like, when you brought up the with Sandra Halsey and her daughter was the scopist for the transcripts in the trial. You were trying to explain that situation once about Sandra Halsey messed up. She made a mistake, and her daughter was the scopist. And they tried to get her daughter to plead against her. And you flat looked at the camera and said, she's not going to testify against her mom. That's her daughter. Do you really think about things you say before you say them? Anywho, moving on. Saying behavior analysis is not accurate when it's an established scientific and sociology study tells me how heavily I'm weighing on anything you're saying. That's right, got you. Remember, everybody's lying except for Darley. Everybody. They're all fucked up except for Darley. All these fucked up people with drinking problems and lying problems, and they'll swing it your way, they all converge on innocent little Darley. All of them. Not just some of them, all of them. Pouring beer out is culture, so I would consider that to be different. I'm open to reviewing the details of the case, but I find almost all of her behaviors and interviews abnormal in a very suspicious way. Totally understandable. I'm just not sure if we can judge off behavior. We are also different. However, I still do it myself sometimes. And even I thought some interviews were odd, so I totally understand. That's logical. There is no such thing as normal in grieving. Well, you need to get with J. Stephen Cooper. Because there's two interviews that J. Stephen Cooper is on where he's explaining the memorial video that was taken. And in both those interviews, he said, and in that video, you could see that she was grieving appropriately. If there's no such thing as normal in grieving, then how does her appellate attorney consider what's normal and abnormal? What's appropriate and inappropriate? Her own attorney. The silly string was brought by the boy's 16-year-old aunt, blaming her. Again, blaming Dana. Blaming Dana for that. They almost always make a point when regarding that silly string to say, well, it was, Dana brought it. Dana brought it. Places blame on everyone but Damon. Remember, Dana's fucked up too, right? Apparently, everybody else is fucked up, right? So they blame it on Dana. But you can see there's a small clip where she says, I brought some silly string and some pops for the boys, and Darlie says, are we even allowed to do this? It was Darlie's finger that was on that can, spraying it high up in the air and over at her son, Drake. It wasn't Dana's hand that did that. It was Darlie's. And the way I understand it is Basha told her she shouldn't do that. And she did do that. And now look. Because Darlie is not going to listen to anybody, by God. Doug Mulder said, you shouldn't get on that stand. Well, I thought it was important for them to hear me say, I didn't kill my children. Well, now what do you think? You guys should have let Doug Mulder run the show like you wanted to. You paid an attorney. And then you start telling him who he can accuse, what he can say. That's like paying somebody to paint your house, and handing them crayons to do it with. I believe that I think that Doug Mulder was looking at the case like, man, she really looks guilty, so let's do some theatrics here with the fifth. And I think if they would let him implicate Darren without proving that Darren did it, that would cause enough reasonable doubt for Darlie. But they said, no, they don't want you implicating Darren. They told him how to do his job. If he could have implicated Darren, the jury that is sitting there might have been thinking, well, you know what? There's not enough reasonable doubt, because that puts reasonable doubt in their head. That was the plan, but it blew up and it didn't work. So again, she blames it on Dana. Poor Dana. Poor Dana. I wonder who was to blame when they were at Six Flags making out with each other. Darren and Dana. I understand that the family knows quite a bit about that. But the public knew about that. We've known this for years. Isn't it odd how she would sit real close to her brother-in-law at trial like that? Danelle wasn't. Barbara Davis wrote that there was wind of it, of Dana and Darren being a little too moochy-foochy, and that Darlie Key got wind of it, put into it. Gee, what would somebody think? If you catch your spouse messing with one of your siblings, wouldn't that make you mad enough to fucking see red and kill? Oh, you want to disrespect my sister? You want to fuck around with my sister? Let me fuck around with your kids. Let me show you. But it's no secret that Dana and Darren had an inappropriate fling. We have confirmation of after the whole Six Flags thing there in Denver. After, if they were mooching around after, they were mooching around before. And could that be one of the reasons why Dana doesn't speak publicly on this case? She doesn't go see Darlie. Do you think she has to live with the fact that since she was messing around with her brother-in-law, that it made her sister snap? Let that sink in a little bit. The silly string was brought by the boy's 16-year-old aunt, who promised silly string to Devin for his birthday. She didn't say anything about promising. He just always wanted to be 7. The Routier and Key family still do this to this day with the silly string. It's for the little ones. You figure they would never want to see that shit again. The prior prayer service was never viewed by the public or the jury. We've seen some of it. We've seen a little bit of it. But years ago, Danelle's mother, Darla Key, kept saying she's got a copy of that tape. So why not show it? Because it doesn't show what they claim it shows. And that's why Doug Mulder didn't want to talk about it on the stand. The tape is this. Darla Key says she's got it. It's 14-hour-long surveillance tape, complete with the rest haven workers mowing and watering the grass. It was from the heart of the child, Darlie's sister, and Darlie was trying to be supportive of what her sister felt was a beautiful sentiment for a 7-year-old that didn't get to celebrate his birthday. Dana brought it, and Darlie, good old Darlie, she let Dana do that. Yeah. It was from the heart of the child, Darlie's sister, who at 16 years old was living with a grown man and was already sexually active, who was fighting with her mother to move in an apartment with a man. That doesn't sound like a child to me. And Darlie was just trying to be supportive of Dana, damn it. That's why she spilled that silly string everywhere. Can't let Dana be upset. I mean, we gotta spray this shit now that she brought it. Right? And then regarding the fingerprint, I believe she's talking about 85J. Listen to this. At the time of the trial, it was explained away as one of the children's fingerprints. Well, crime felt like it was a juvenile print. He didn't say it was one of the children. He felt like it was a juvenile print. They did not have fingerprints on the boys to compare it. However, they did have Darla's full fingerprints, and it was not matched to her during the trial. This fingerprint was only contributed to Darla after we were able to prove it did not belong to the boys post conviction. I don't know how they proved it didn't belong to the boys. They exhumed the boys and weren't able to get prints off them. The state decided that they could not rule out or rule one of Darlie's fingerprints. It's very odd if you ask me. This man ran through CODIS and it didn't match to anyone, including Darlie. Considering she's a convicted offender, this not matching her should further confirm it's not hers. Well, the print's not really going to match anybody because it's a partial print. It's smeared. It's not really going to match anybody. They tried to go and see what kind of DNA they could get off of the mitochondrial DNA, mitochondrial DNA. And Crime Talk says, "Oh, that's good to know. I honestly believe that Susan Smith case helped shape Darlie." No. Our expert, Lloyd Harold, actually his name is Lloyd Harrell, Harrell, retired FBI. It's okay for their expert to be a retired person, not the state's expert. Thought Darlie had possibly sedated with some form of chloroform. It cannot be proven during a drug screen, but it can be proven by the burn that it would leave on her throat. See, they want you to believe that there was a towel soaked with chloroform. This intruder didn't bring his own knife, but he did bring some chloroform. He made up some chloroform before he got there. He didn't bring a knife, though. He knows he's going to kill somebody, so he's got to have that chloroform. Yeah. Okay. It can't be proven during a drug screen. She's absolutely right. But they want you to believe that they dip this rag in chloroform, which none of the rags on the scene had chloroform on them. But they dipped this rag in chloroform and put it over Darlie's mouth, and it knocked her out. The problem that you have with chloroform is that it burns skin. It leaves red marks, and it has an incredible smell. There's no way that she could have been drugged and knocked out with something without evidence of it. None. Lloyd Harrell, who she's got her name wrong, also, if you look at his testimony, he testified that Jimmy Patterson and Chris Frost leaving that bug out there at Rest Haven was a crime. was a federal crime, federal wiretapping crime. And that they shouldn't have done that. They weren't supposed to do that without a warrant. That's your smart FBI guy. Because for one, it wasn't illegal. And for two, you don't need a warrant to film anything outside. Unless it's on private property. And Rest Haven gave their permission for them to be there. Yeah, Lloyd Harrell is a dumbass. He's the same one that said that when Waddell pulled up, that it wasn't Darren that he saw in the front yard. It was the intruder. And that Waddell, his theory is that Waddell saw the man in the front yard and just walked on inside. Let him go. That's what Lloyd Harrell thinks. He's an idiot. From the little I know about this case, I think it's clear that the authorities wanted to get someone behind bars. I think they wanted to solve the case, not necessarily get somebody behind bars, and didn't care if they did or not. It was more important to close the case. It's shocking now how many women in the U.S. are found guilty of murder. It's around 15%. Yeah. And most women that are wrongfully convicted are convicted for crimes that never happened. Child abused or neglected or murdered. I don't know what she's talking about there. Unless she did a poll of all the wrongfully convicted women. Crime talk. Crime talk. Danelle's an idiot. And here he is hurting her again. Oh, he's hurt her. The fuck out of here with that shit, man.